Welcome back to Peace Through Strength podcast, brought to you by the American Security Council Foundation. I am your host, Joy Votrobek, here with our senior analyst, Laurence Sanford. Welcome back. And our special guest, Mr. Paris Michaels.
Thank you.
Today, we're going to talk to Mr. Michaels, who has a Ph.D. from the Institute of World Politics and has traveled the world extensively as an airline pilot. And a little side note about the Institute of World Politics. The American Security Council was founded back in 1958 in a fight against keeping communism out of the U.S. And when the Institute of World Politics started in 1990, the American Security Council gave them their extensive library. Larry, would you like to introduce us, brother?
Interestingly, Paris and I first were met through one of my position papers, which was titled Time to Turkey, Trot Turkey out of NATO. And Paris contacted me saying he agreed with most of the tenets of the paper. And from there, the conversation turned to, would you like to come down to our studio here at American Security Council Foundation and have a conversation with Joy and I on the subject? So, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Joy. It's been a pleasure.
So let's talk about let's talk Turkey.
Let's talk Turkey. Well, I have to commend you, first of all, on the title of your article. After doing a little research, I found out that the Turkey Trot is actually a holiday in Buffalo, New York, that happens on Thanksgiving, the day of the turkey. And people come out and do a race of sorts in costume as turkeys, and they run like turkeys. So that's the Turkey Trot. I first thought it was a dance.
It was a dance back in the early 1900s. My mother was quite familiar with it, yes.
That's not in Wikipedia.
Oh.
So well, so yeah, thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure. It was quite refreshing for me to see an article that's kind of becoming very timely. When I picked my thesis topic for my doctoral paper, I had a hard time getting a piece approved that was just simply about the Eastern Mediterranean. I'm of Greek descent, and I have a big interest in the political and geopolitical events in the area. We're on the doorstep of the Middle East, and Turkey, Greece, Israel, Syria, Jordan, all these countries have a big part in what's about to happen in the world. So I picked a topic that goes like this: the United States' strategic options in the Eastern Mediterranean, global interests and rivalries impacted by the Cyprus conflict. So that's 1974. I can give you all the trials and tribulations of choosing a topic for a thesis, but I won't. And I can honestly say that your article really cut to the quick, and a lot of it has to do with, do we have Turkey stay in NATO or leave NATO? And what do we really want? And what are the consequences of some of those things? So I hope to talk about some of these things today. Turkey has been a good ally at times throughout the history of NATO, which was started in 1949. Turkey became a member of NATO in 1952 at the same time as Greece. So both were put there. The reason and the rationale for the simultaneous membership was we had to protect the southern flank from the penetration of communism of Europe. And if you drew a line from Greece to Cyprus to Turkey, you have the perfect obstacle for that type of penetration. Now today, you hear membership talk going on about Sweden. Finland already has. Here we're talking about, in that case, the northern flank. Okay, and who's on the eastern flank? Well, the old standbys, Poland and the other countries there. So with this kind of flank mentality in mind to protect ourselves and our friends in Europe, you think of almost a military strategy, how to keep the propaganda, the infiltration, and the communist plate from penetrating. And this is how NATO came about. One of its main missions is to deter the advent of communism in the Western world. It's made up of 31 nations, perhaps soon to be 32, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Your report hit on some very timely points that are current. The real problem that we're having these days in the Eastern Mediterranean actually started in the 1200s. with the Ottoman Empire. And really to get a good, firm grasp on the situation as it exists today and why Turkey behaves as it behaves, you'd have to know the history of all the Ottoman Empire. And I'm here to tell you, you don't want to do that. It's a long story. It's complex. It's well recorded, actually. And I spend a lot of time explaining what I think Americans don't understand about the situation with NATO, the Eastern Mediterranean, and some of the conflicts that are going on over there. Is there anything you'd like to ask me so far?
No, the Ottoman Turks came out of Central Asia, and I know they finally conquered Constantinople in 1463 and made Christian part of Turkey Muslim.
Yeah, they had a big campaign to advance Islamic thought and religion. But a lot of people don't know is that the Ottoman Empire extended all the way not only from current-day Turkey, but across North Africa, up the Iberian Peninsula, and into Central Europe. And there is where the Ottomans get involved. And that's how the Ottoman Empire began. So there you had a complete loop around the Mediterranean, which in that time was everything that had to do with commerce, defense, and modernization of the Western world to boot. So,
You have a question.
yeah.
So getting back to your original statement about NATO and Turkey, and yes, they have been they've been allies at numerous points. But right now, with Erdogan in charge, what are your thoughts on them being in NATO?
All right. Well, I agree that Turkey's role in NATO has to be re-examined. And if you do re-examine it, you have to come up with some carrots and sticks and consequences. And I think we've been using all the carrots, and we haven't been using enough sticks as far as the way to manage an organization. I have to remind everyone that NATO is not run by the United States, that we helped form it, and we largely funded it. But it's not our organization. We're just a member of it. And there are 31 other members, and we have to form a consensus for what is important, what the priorities are, and how things are handled. You know, Turkey is, quote unquote, a democracy. They vote for their leaders, and Mr. Erdogan is now in his third term in 20 years. He was mayor of Istanbul for quite a long time. And he knows his territory, he knows his business, he knows his history, and he also knows the United States, and he knows Russia, and he knows China very, very well. Now, those three last countries are the great superpowers of the day. He has to contend with them because he still sits in a very strategic part of the world, as Turkey always has. Just to review, Turkey lies along the old Silk Road, where East and West met, where the trade from China went to Europe and vice versa. And now we have another kind of pathway through that same area, and that extends north and south. It goes from Africa across the Middle East and into the rest of Asia. So he sits at a very strategic place. And the Mediterranean has only one access point besides the Suez Canal and that end of the Mediterranean, and that is the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus, which lead into the Black Sea, which sits on Russia's doorstep, makes part of their coastline. So it's a very tenable place to be. A lot of things are happening there, both geopolitically, economically. We have large refugee situations going on in that part of the world. He's in the crossroads of all of them, and he has to deal with them. So we move on to the NATO organization as it functions. And you see, because it's a consensus, for instance, Mr. Erdogan was able to hold up the admission of Sweden because he has a vote, and the vote for new members has to be unanimous.
And why was he holding it up?
Well, that's a good story. And actually, I'm going to lead off with one of my favorite sayings, that Mr. Erdogan is a rascal. And everybody in the world loves rascals. But if this rascal is going too far, I think he's going to run out of luck. What he does, and the Turkish people are very good at bargaining and trading and making good deals. So he's turned this Swedish event into a bargaining chip. In other words, he holds the vote. He holds one vote. He can hold up this whole deal. NATO wants Sweden and Finland to be NATO members because they would guard the north flank. Okay, and that's also a very strategic place. It's on the top of the world. It's on the Arctic Circle. You have submarine traffic, ICBMs coming over the poles, whatever. We need a protection in the north flank. Now, when I say from protection, from who? Well, assumably Russia. Now, everyone says the Cold War is over. Well, it never ended. The Cold War never really ended. You're finding this out now with the advance on Crimea as well as the advance on the Ukraine. So, the United States really hasn't taken a side yet on how they're going to manage this war. It's still in its early stages. I'm now convinced that this will be a prolonged conflict, that it's not going to end soon or easy. I have my own personal feelings on what we should do, but I'm not running the show. Mr. Zelensky's doing a nice job of holding back the Russians from taking over his land, and it's very commendable. But we're only starting. We're only getting started now.
But Erdogan is opposed to Sweden because?
Well, it goes even deeper now. Again, he uses bargaining chips. He's a great bargainer. He's a good dealer. Right? So one of his bargaining chips is that the Swedish have picked up Kurdish refugees, people who are they're in Sweden on asylum. They got out of Turkey because they spoke up against Erdogan and his regime, the AKP party, and he wanted Sweden to do something about these people. So he told Sweden, until you stop harboring the terrorists of my country, I am not going to vote for your membership into NATO. Now, it should also be noted that Mr. Erdogan himself is accused of harboring Hamas and some other unsavory groups, Hezbollah, several others, right in his own backyard, if not at his dinner table. But we can't talk about that, I guess. No one knows for sure. I don't know what the story is, but it's odd for him to stick up for eliminating terrorists when it's only the terrorists that he sees as terrorists. So that's how he kind of operates this way, okay? And everything he does, from energy to defense to commerce, he has to take control of the deal. And he's very good at it. He's very, very good at it. He knows the West, he knows NATO, and he knows Europe, who, by the way, all of them are his customers, including Russia and China. Okay, so he's doing business with them, so they're business partners. And as you know, business partners have to be handled with a certain amount of degree of respect and saving face and all that. And this has been good. Turkey is quite a sophisticated country, despite what a lot of people believe. They have an aerospace industry that will not quit. It's a very, very good airplanes, drones that they make. Anyone's been to the terminal in Istanbul, that's the first-class airport of the world right now. It really works well. A lot of thought's been put into it. And these are the things that you see from a country who has potential and capabilities. The infrastructure is there. It's good. It's managed well. They go all over the world to educate their people, and they come back. Many of them do come back and do a lot of good things for their country, and that's admirable as well. So he's known for his deal with the Russians for the S-400 missile system, which has the capability of defeating the United States stealth apparatus used on some of our aircraft, like the F-35. I said that Turkey had a good aerospace industry. It was so good, in fact, it had, I think, one of the largest parts of the F-35 stealth jet fighter program that was being conducted with some of the major aerospace companies in the world. But because of violations in buying the S-400 missile system, there's elements of that could defeat the F-35 stealth ability. So this became a problem, and for the first time in NATO history, I believe, someone took such a drastic measure to penalize a NATO member, another NATO member, for taking such action. But what do you observe from this? Erdogan has guts. He stood up for what he wanted to do, maybe because it was popular with his people, maybe because it was a good deal. Maybe the Russians gave him that system. Who knows? He knows what the deal would look like, because you don't really know. He's got another deal going right now with the Chinese to build a canal that's going to parallel the big canal, the Great Canal, that goes through Turkey. And not only being a technological feat, he's taken a kind of a loophole, taken advantage of a loophole in a document called the Montreux Convention of 1936. Turkey in 1936 was tasked with the responsibility of keeping the Black Sea basically weapon-free. It could be used for the Russians to get to their ports, to do some commerce, but everything was restricted and controlled. Well, in the year 2020, for the first time, the people who lived along the banks of that waterway saw a Russian submarine just float through, and it's been that way ever since. He's not stopping them. He's not. Now that Russian sub went on to a base in Syria, in the Mediterranean. So now you're starting to talk about some tactical maneuvers that are very tricky and should warrant some investigation. So instead, President Erdogan says, "No, I'm staying within the rules," and so on and so forth, and he just sticks to his what he thinks is right. Yeah, and NATO, being a consensus organization, says, "Well, let's see what he does," so on and so forth. Which begs to the next topic that was the main topic of your paper. And that is, should Turkey still remain in NATO? Should it be allowed to stay? Okay, this is a very a thought-provoking question. Okay, and I'll tell you why. It's very basic. So who would you rather have? You want the bad guy or the person you're suspicious of close to your vest, or do you want him on the other side of the fence? All right, so in this case, as someone once said, you know, that guy's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. And I think it was Charles Krauthammer and Roosevelt made the same comment about some other politicians. So as long as he's our son of a bitch, this is a good deal. We know what he's doing. He can only go so far. China and Russia both have tenuous relationships with the United States right now. China has basically threatened us to take away our military superiority, and they are doing it. They're not there yet, but if they continue at the pace they're moving now, probably be several years. But they're putting out some aircraft carriers and ships, probably nowhere near the quality of ours, and we have much more sophisticated equipment. But you know, there comes a point where numbers take over the quality of the. Yeah, the numbers matter, and they can do that. They have a lot of people. They have a lot of people. So these are threats. When you're the big guy on the block, you know, the taller you are, the harder you fall, and that's us right now. And we're kind of in that position where we're a superpower, we're the best, and we're the target of those who want to take us over or take away our title.
So question on NATO and Turkey's membership. Going back to, you said, the strategic position they're in, which makes sense. So we would want that on our side. We would want that as a NATO member. Should NATO's, I guess, the nations be looked at, the structure of how this works? Should one nation have that much power to stop Sweden from joining?
All right. Well, you know, there's treaties and then there's laws. And treaties are agreements between countries to behave in a certain manner. So Erdogan kind of hides behind that shield of, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just doing what's best for my country. And, you know, now he should be focusing, and somebody should be challenging this and saying, but it's not what's best for the common good of the organization that you're a member of that has collective security and collective defense. And you're taking advantage of this because you're playing with our adversaries. Now, he'll turn right around and say, well, the United States is doing business with China, and we are. Okay, and we have been doing, you know, supposedly when the Cold War was dead, you know, we are real cozy with Russia. And now, you know, the thing that we're supposed to be protecting is Europe, and Europe is, you know, full-scale commerce going on with Russia and China. And in fact, they're at Russia's whim for energy. They still are. See, that should never be. That shouldn't. That should have improved a long time ago. And again, Erdogan has the jewels, because right off of Turkey, there's some very nice gas and oil fields that the rest of the world wants to tap into, because the price of fuel and energy is now so high that it's worth going down deeper to drill, and technology's made it easier to drill as well. So he's holding the cards again, another bargaining chip, and he won't become a part of any member organization that wants to exploit those oil fields. And believe it or not, he's the only one out of all the countries. When you have Egypt dealing with Israel on a pipeline and they agree to it, and somebody like Erdogan doesn't want to even hear about it, and he uses such ridiculous reasons for not joining, is because they still use the word Cyprus in the talks and so forth. He's working on another agenda. He has something else going on here. Let's see, I'm sorry, I forgot the first part of your question, but
it was should one country in NATO have that much power to stop Sweden from joining?
Well, it's a club, and everybody's in the club, and as long as no one else in the club has anything to say about it, and I'll give you an example. Germany's very influential in the European Union and makes a lot of rules in commerce with the other countries in Europe. Okay, Germany was not an ally. I mean, Turkey was not an ally with Germany, but they weren't allied with the Allies until the last weeks of both World War I and World War II. Okay, so what you have there is an understanding between the Turks and the Germans, that they understand each other. Like the Turks were selling them chromite all during the war, which is a necessary element for materiel used in combat. The rest of the world just kind of looked at it like, well, that's what they're going to do, that's what they did, but they're not making a big bruise on us and so forth. So in the last weeks, they capitulated and said, yeah, we're with the Allies. Well, they see the tanks coming, they see the ships coming offshore. So they went with the winner. All right, this is also a very common aspect of negotiation and how you make deals and so forth. So you always go with the winner because it works out better for you. So you have a situation here where Erdogan pulls his card when he can, and he gets away with it because there's no resistance. Now, Germany does a lot of business with Turkey, all right? I'd say probably 20% of the German population is of at least Turkish descent or comes from Turkey or is related to some. So as a culture assimilates with another culture, these people become bankers. They run television stations, automobile factories, so on and so forth. And what happens is the people who lead Germany now have to be sensitive to what goes on in Turkey. So we're not going to cut Turkey's legs off here if all these people that are voting for me to put me in office. Yeah. Same thing goes on with the Russian. The former prime minister or chancellor of Germany is now vice president of Rosprom, which is a Russian oil company. Now, this is an unusual situation here. So there's entangling alliances that kind of make it difficult to take action on the membership of Turkey in NATO.
So how would you get Turkey out of NATO? I mean, what are the steps that would be needed, or the rationale that Turkey should be expelled or trotted out of NATO?
The first argument you run across when you even approach the subject is that there is no language in the NATO charter to expel a member. Okay, the charter is all pro, this is what we do, this is how we're going to do it, this is your dues, by the way.
Can the charter be amended? So, for example, right now you need 100% agreement on a thing. Can't you amend the charter to say we need a supermajority of 9 out of 10 or something like that?
Right.
Anything can be changed. It's like any code that's made could be broken, right?
Right.
Same kind of thing.
That's why.
But I just got done telling you about Germany and why Germany's not going to make a stink about this.
Okay.
Okay. Because Germany's selling them cars and Turkey's selling them airplane parts, so on and so forth. So it's kind of like a stalemate here. Well, we'll see what happens. The official loophole to get rid of a member, the official loophole is in the Vienna Convention, which says you have to go by what the treaty says that you're going to do. If you're a signatory to a treaty, you have to behave like you're in the treaty, okay? Your other option is to leave. You can opt out, okay? So what most nations do is they wait until the administration of I'm going to call them the belligerent member, leaves. So in a democracy, you have presidents come and go, all the other governmental systems in Europe. Somebody's reelected every 5 years or comes in or is appointed or something. So you hope that the new guy coming in is going to have a little more sense and get with the party here. There's some fact to this, truth to this, because you'd hope that if a country is doing well, they'll try to keep that person in office if he's making the right decisions. Now here, the mystery to me is Turkey's economy is a shamble right now. It's like 0.03 lira to the dollar right now. You know, this is getting like out of sight.
Inflation is.
Yeah. So people aren't really having a good time in Turkey right now. I mean, they're living, but they're not living like they used to. And he's the guy in charge, and he's supposed to make this better for everybody. So you know, there's a natural way of getting a new leader in office. But Mr. Erdogan just got reelected a month ago for another 5 years, his third term.
I was just going to bring that up because it seemed like the front leader was really going to take this possibly away from him.
Yeah. Now, you would never suspect that an election is rigged.
No.
No, none of us would assume that. So you have to say, well, how did he win? Well, first of all, he cleverly only won by 3%, right? And then second of all, he made some good grandstand moves here with the Sweden thing, and he plays up the nationalism. And you have to remember the Turkish people, coming from an empire like the Ottoman Empire, after World War I, they lost a lot of property, okay? This goes back to hearing your grandmother and grandfather talk about, you know, boy, we used to have a house in Crete, and this and that, you know, so they took it away and now have to live here, and that kind of thing. So this sticks to the mind of people, and when you play up nationalism and patriotism and the flag and all that, they want that land back. And this guy's telling me he's going to try to get it back for me, and that's what he's doing. He's trying to get back all this land, and he has a reason. He also piles on with that he wants Turkey to be the caliphate of the whole Islamic world, okay? Now, today, as we speak, he just left Saudi Arabia, which is another Sunni country that also is very interested in who becomes the caliphate. And they go back and forth at each other's throats all the time. They're not the best of friends, but today they were friends, and he moved on now to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates to do the same thing, to mend the fences. He's a good boy this week. He just got reelected. He's going to change the world, and Turkey's going to be better off because it's in the dumps now. And Turkey has the potential of being something. I just don't, you know, the people are educated, they're hardworking, and so forth. It's a good country. They have natural resources, except for energy. And that's another fly in the soup here, because the energy, they don't make money off of oil. They make money off of the transit of oil and gas coming through pipelines, which, by the way, the builder of the pipeline gets to tell you when it's time to turn the switch this way, the valve this way, or that way. And the valve's never turned towards Russia. It's always Russian gas and oil leaving. Okay, so if the guy that pays me the bills to turn that valve says leave the valve open, you're going to leave the valve open. When he says let's close the valve, he closes it, and that's the position, again, the chip that Erdogan has. Now, these are very basic examples of some very technical and sophisticated issues, but I'm trying to do the best I can here in 20, 30 minutes, and so I gave you the cream of the crop on some of them.
Yeah, there's certainly some sophisticated issues here.
Yeah.
And going back to Russia and the S-400 missile system that Turkey has, do you see a problem with this deal with the U.S. and taking the F-16s? I know they're different than the F-35s, but what, in your opinion, is that an issue, a national security issue at all?
Sure it is. Look, Turkey, not Erdogan, but Turkey itself, has previously taken NATO equipment and used it on other NATO members. And the best example I can give you is everything from 1974 that was done in Cyprus to the low-level, high-speed strafing runs that they're making in terror on Greek islands to this very day. 11,000 airspace violations, okay, fishing, so on and so forth. They're hogging up the whole end of the Mediterranean.
Why don't you give a little
there.
background on the Cyprus situation you mentioned back in 1970. What was it like in 1970, and what happened?
1974, there was, first of all, chaos in the United States. I'm talking about the week that Nixon left office. All right, this is a good time for a deal-making country to know what to do, okay? Greece was under the influence of American military leadership under our military. Cyprus was in the middle of losing a president because he was a communist priest. And as all this confusion going on, and Turkey says, now's our time. We can invade this island. We could take it back. And to this day, 1/3 of that island is inhabited and occupied by Turkish citizens. They have declared it the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. It's only recognized by Turkey. There are drone bases, Air Force bases, and Navy bases. These violate just about every law on the treaties of how these things should go. This is the United States issue. We never finished that. We started it. We helped get in it. It's a little bit like Vietnam and a couple other skirmishes we've gotten into. Didn't get finished. It's an undecided open wound in society that continues festering. So you have people that sometimes they get along, sometimes they don't. And really, from a political standpoint, this gives the island a reputation as a great place to go. If you're a Russian oligarch that wanted to hide with all your money and family, this is a great island to go to. First of all, because you can hopscotch either side of the fence, and I'm with the Turks today and I'm with the Greeks tomorrow, and that kind of thing. By the way, the Greeks do not want Turkey kicked out of the NATO alliance. And that might come as a surprise, even though they're enemies. And the reason is they want the rest of the world to see how Turkey behaves. Because they're only 1/5 the size of Turkey, okay? Turkey has 260 F-16s, and Greece has, I think, 113, something like that. Now, the United States throws Greece a cherry once in a while. They're going to get upgrade packages for the F-16s that we're going to give Greece or maintain for them. But they say, well, that won't do us any good if you're going to give Turkey 260 brand new ones or upgraded issues with advanced technology that they got from the Russians, let's say. So they're breaking the code. So here's where Erdogan's sitting on the fence of who's going to let me do what, and he's going to see. Right now, no one's done anything to him in 20 years. The only person is Donald Trump, took that F-35 away from him. And he's not hurting. He's not hurting about that at all.
Well, of course, it goes back to history. I mean, back in the 1800s, the Turks ruled Greece, and so the Greeks had their War of Independence. They haven't forgotten that.
No. I have pictures of my grandparents. My grandfather wore a fez. I mean, it's no big deal, but that's what he wore because he had to wear it. There's another thing with this Ataturk. He uses Ataturk. Erdogan does a great job. Ataturk has this reputation of being the great democratizer of Turkey and the modernizer.
Ataturk took over after World War I.
That's correct.
The rule of Turkey. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And he ended the caliphate. He ended the caliphate.
He secularized Turkey.
Yes. And this is all to appease. He would appease the great powers who took him and said, here's the way it's going to be from now on. Okay? We're not going to lean on you too hard, but you're going to have to give up some of this property here. And actually, Ataturk said, all these islands out there, there's nothing but rocks and a couple of dozen people on each one. I can't control all them. Let the Greeks handle them. So he let go of a lot of land. But now, because of technology, there's communications, fast boats, airplanes, satellites. Now he could return. Turkey could come back and keep a handle on all that stuff.
But these islands, some of them are right.
Some are
close.
Right close to
low
Turkey.
tide. You could walk to Turkey from Greece. Yes, that's true. And it's funny because you talk to the people on those islands, and their attitude is completely. Some of these are still Turkish islands, and some are Greek islands, and they don't care. They really. What am I going to do? Where am I going? I live on this rock here. It's all my whole world is this rock. I haven't even seen an airplane, that kind of thing. So it's kind of hard to get everybody mobilized into one cause or another. But again, it's a bargaining chip for Erdogan. If he can get a 1 square mile island, look what I got back for you. And who's going to cough it up? So it's the principle of the thing that makes the agitation so great. It's a contest. And what's the rest of NATO doing? 30 other countries. What are they doing down there? And I'm not going to send my guys to go shoot people that don't want to even die.
We got other problems.
Got other problems.
In Ukraine over there.
Yeah.
Another good bargaining chip he used now is he got the UN to give him permission to let the Ukraine go through the straits to take the grain. Now, Turkey itself gets 27% of the grain from the Ukraine. So, but some of that grain makes it all the way to Australia. I mean, they have a global.
But right now, the Russians are saying no to further shipments.
Yes,
so what's going to happen then?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Reading that as well.
Just as recently as yesterday, that they're bringing this up. You can't starve us out. That's not humane. Well, who started this war? So it's a little bit of this back and forth. It's very complex, and you have to know the history. And every time someone pulls a history card out, it's another bargaining chip. So you have to be careful what you're going to use for your defense and your legitimization of your motives.
You both really touched on my next question, which is, in your opinion, what's Turkey's role with Ukraine and Russia right now?
It's the same role Turkey always has. What's best for Turkey. Right now, Turkey's building drones, but the Ukrainians are building the engines for those drones. Okay? Russia's even buying the drones. Okay, so you could figure out what's going on here. Somebody's making all this happen or letting it happen, so forth. So what are you supposed to say to some NATO commander? Like, go down there and get some order going. Get a hold of this thing. Like, the drones are coming at me from both sides. I don't know whose drones they are. So it's kind of, and a perfect example of what I'm saying is Libya. Okay, ask Erdogan what his part and role in Libya was, and you'll get a 50-page answer. And you still don't understand. You get this little bit like the Wagner Group. They're in there fighting on both sides. Well, how's this going? Somebody's pulling strings, somebody's making payoffs. I don't know. This is how wars are won these days. So it's very, very, I don't know. It's a mystery to me how and why it all works this way. But I have a feeling that what we see on television isn't all of what's going on.
Oh, really?
I have that feeling too.
Yeah, well, that's.
Oh, really? I'm shocked.
We're not alone. We're not alone.
Thoughts, Larry?
No.
Any other questions?
No. The more you know, the less you know.
Yeah. See all this just for today.
Well, you certainly gave us quite a bit to think about here.
Yeah, thank you.
No, well, it's been a pleasure being here, and don't give up the topic, Larry, because you will be discouraged from pursuing it at some point or another.
Well, there's a lot of topics out there to be discussed.
Yes.
And one of my favorite expressions is, and sometimes it's daunting, there's so much going on, but one of my favorite expressions is, better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. That's all you can do.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And in peace through strength. That's the motto of American Security Council.
Yes, it is. And we have work to do, one light at a time. But thank you, Larry, for your articles. They're doing a great job with those.
Thank you.
And glad you brought up Turkey, because
We have to meet Paris.
is interested and came on today. So thank you, sir, for coming on.
Thank you very much, Joy. Thank you, Larry.
Appreciate
It's been
your
an
knowledge
honor to
on
be
all
here.
this.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, you can view all of Larry's articles at our website, www.ascf.us. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Subscribe and comment to our YouTube channel and our Rumble channel. And Larry's also on Substack as well. You can read his articles there. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Michaels.
Joy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we hope you listen in on our next podcast on Peace Through Strength. Thank you.